Atlantis is a utopia that people thought never existed. Being fascinated with Atlantis, I did some digging on why people thought it wasn't real and others thought it was real. Now, Atlantis, being that it has sunk into the bottom of the ocean, doesn't have much to be discovered on since we do not have the technology to obtain knowledge upon what happened to it and what's happening to it right now. Atlantis was brought up by a philosopher whose name is pretty hard to pronounce. But he stated that he saw Atlantis on one of his trips around the world and never actually said what it looked like, but said it existed. After he said that, people went out in order to discover if he was telling the truth or not. Although he was known as a very truthful philosopher and has never once told a lie, they still question his sightings of Atlantis. Atlantis was thought to be once a part of Europe, but to be broken off by Europe by the plate tectonics moving around the world. And no one really knows why it sunk except for the fact that it was broken off from Europe. Now, you might have never actually heard about Atlantis, but for me, the first time I heard about Atlantis was in a cartoon. And from then on out, I just kind of consider Atlantis being a real place since many other things such as SpongeBob, the Marvel movies, DC movies, and other action movies and some drama movies mentioned it. I'm not going to tell you to go out and search for it on your own to see if Atlantis is real, because that's absurd, of course, because Atlantis is at the bottom of the ocean, which is very unreachable at this time. But now people think Atlantis would be inhabited by fish people, which might not be true, but the thought of Atlantis being down there is true. Another fact about Atlantis is that even though only one person has stated that they have seen it, multiple others have said they've heard truthful stories, they have photographic evidence, they've read books that have been brought about through time of its history. The only thing that these books do have in common, though, is that they know for a fact that it existed. They never actually questioned themselves if it existed or not, or if it was a mirage of the sea or whatever. One scientist will go so far as to tell you that Atlantis could have never existed because of the fact that it doesn't match the patterns of where people thought it to be broken off of the continent of Europe. Many people think that if it did exist, it would have fit right back in place, even though they didn't take into account the erosion from water hitting the sands and everything else, forming and shaping the sides of the continents and everything. But others have stated that they've done research, the measurements, and all of that to prove that it actually was there. A fun fact about Atlantis, though, is that it was one of the first to be called a utopia. Now, I know this speech kind of seemed like it was random, but since there is not much to be known about Atlantis yet, because people still are developing technology in order to discover more about it, about its history, about its cultures, and everything else who lived there before it sunk and everything. I do want to say I believe wholeheartedly that it did exist once, and people loved it so much, but the only thing wrong with it was that it was sunken. In conclusion, Atlantis did exist, it was destroyed, and you should never doubt yourself if you do believe that it existed.